All right, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for hopping on to this month's Industry 30. Today's webinar, we have Andrew McDonald and Gina Lombardo from Fox Rothschild. They're going to talk about AI and legal risks and possibilities. So we're happy to have them on today's call. This is going to be recorded and placed on the chapter's website, so you can access this after the webinar. You do have the ability to unmute yourself if you have any questions, but I ask that we save those for the end. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and Gina. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I think we have a relevant, interesting topic to talk to you today. If you don't know, if you haven't seen me before, I'm Andrew McDonald. I'm a partner in our Philadelphia office and practice labor and employment law. I'm not an AI lawyer. I don't know if there is such a thing, but this technology is really touching all aspects of life. We'll concentrate on employment law today, but also touch on a few other things. And Gina, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Gina Lombardo. I'm an associate in our Philadelphia office, and I work with Andrew primarily. We're going to talk about AI and its uses and the risks, but also the benefits and the increased efficiency for your businesses.
Okay. So we're going to do and when I mean an overview, I really mean an overview of AI products. Um, I don't know how these things work necessarily, so that's not this presentation. What we're going to talk about here are legal risks, potential for liability, and then also test cases, like things that we have been using AI for, and things that we are not using AI for, and some ideas of what you could use AI for safely in your business.
So when we say AI in this presentation, we primarily mean large language model tools, or they call them LLMs. So an LLM is essentially a computer program that's been fed enough examples to be able to recognize and interpret human language or other data, and then the LLMs can essentially guess the next word. So a lot of these programs are trained on data that's gathered from the internet. So it's thousands of millions of gigabytes worth of text. And this is important to remember because when we input information into AI programs, every time you're inserting data into this program, the program is using your data to learn for the next person, to make the program better. So that's also an issue here because you're inserting data and you're making that data public. So programs like OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude, they generate like natural language output. And then there's also a growing category of specialty products, those that are built for specific users, like Harvey for AI. Andrew and I have Harvey, that we insert into Harvey is confidential because we pay for that and it's our firm's internal AI system. But if you're using ChatGPT, every time you're inserting data into ChatGPT, Chat is using that data to improve its AI and learn for the next person. So the next time someone asks a question similar, it'll have a better answer for that person. So how can we use AI? AI can help us, research, brainstorm ideas, outline arguments, summarize material. You can put a bunch of information into AI and ask it to summarize it. Sometimes when we have a business adversary and I don't really know about the business, I'll take their website and I'll take the link from that website and I'll copy and paste it into AI and I'll say summarize what this company does. And basically what AI will do is they'll go through their entire website and summarize what the company does in layman's terms. AI can also draft first pass documents, which Andrew will talk about later, how we need to be careful when we do that. But it's very helpful in, getting a first pass on things that, seem daunting and take a lot of time. And then AI is really great at gathering and sorting data. Um, and we'll talk about that later and how we use AI to sort data for our clients to, more efficiently create timelines and help us, in the practice of law. But, the key is to treat outputs as drafts, um, rather than a finished product. We want to make sure that we're reviewing anything that we get from AI rather than, taking the product that they produce and using it as a final draft.
All right, so I want to start with, part of this webinar is to tell you the possibilities, but I'm going to start with some of the risks and some mistakes that AI can make. So I just pulled this up because I had seen this in an article, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't know if this was really passed off as a floor plan or someone put it on the internet and said it was, but this looks, maybe to me, maybe not to you guys, but to me at a first look, this looks like AI created a decent floor plan. But when you look at it, I've circled some of these problems. I circled here near the garage. Apparently that's the door to, I don't see another door to this floor plan. I'm not really sure what's out here because it's called the master room. I don't know if that was supposed to be some sort of deck. There are 2 toilets, it looks like, or 2 sinks in this room here called a coat bath, which I don't know what a coat bath is. There are 2 tubs in this bathroom over here. There are a series of little tiny rooms here. One's called a bedroom that has a sink or a toilet. This has 3 sinks. This bathroom is not really attached to the rest of these other bathroom rooms that are next to them. So if you expect AI to be able to do and create a finished final version of anything that you're doing, you need to check, because if you're in a rush and you think this looks okay, that's kind of what you were looking for, there could be mistakes that someone will see if they just pay a little bit of attention. And I also think it's important that if you have especially newer employees or maybe an employee who starts to dabble in AI, you've got to make sure that they are checking and someone else is checking their work if they are using AI. So that's something kind of in business that could go wrong. With us lawyers, our biggest risk is called an AI hallucination. So AI tools can sometimes what the AI folks call hallucinate, because the AI products, they want, their goal is to give you an answer. And sometimes they will hallucinate and just create an answer, even though it's incorrect. So in law, lawyers are having AI draft their briefs, submitting them to a court, and they have made up cases in there. And judges do not like that because that is, when you are citing a case as a lawyer, it has to be real. But it's very important when you're making arguments because you're stressing to the court, another judge has found this way, so you should find the same way, or you have to. This is binding. This is from the Supreme Court or a higher court. And if you as an advocate pass off incorrect citations, then the judge might even cite it if he's not checking. So it can be somewhat disastrous. I have an example here. This is just a cut and paste from a case where, if you look down here near the bottom, this person, Farviar, he personally had to pay the court sanctions of $7,500. There were other consequences to this lawyer's client. He wasn't able to it was as the judge treated it as if that brief, that memo had never been filed because it used the incorrect citations. So therefore, as if they never made that motion and they couldn't win whatever they were seeking, simply because the lawyer had used AI. So I'm going to, near the end, address like what you can do in terms of dealing with counsel, your lawyer. But this is something that as lawyers we are mindful of. But it's an example too of just what this technology wants to do. It wants to give you an answer. It is tasked. It has to give you an answer. And if it doesn't have that answer, it will just generate it. It doesn't have to be a legal brief for this hallucination to happen. It could invent, something from an electrical code. It could just invent something out of nowhere, and maybe you design a plan based on that. That would be a disaster for everyone involved. So also in terms of legal risks, and I noticed in the participants that are here today, there at least there's someone has introduced a read AI meeting notes. So what I'm about to tell you the specifics about, if we were having a lawyer attorney-client privilege conversation, because that AI tool is in this meeting, it is not privileged. You have blown the privilege, and anyone can get at it, and anyone could get a video if you were recording it, a text readout if that was what was recording the minutes, or not minutes, a transcript, and then your adversary could get all your communications on that topic, not just this one communication. Once you blow the privilege, it's on a whole topic basis. So it could be really disastrous for you and your lawyer if your lawyer doesn't pick up. So pick up that AI is here. Now, practically, how's your adversary going to know? I don't know, but we'll talk about in a second how they could find out. So this is just the basics of attorney-client privilege. It has to be a communication. It has to be between the lawyer and the client. It has to be made in confidence. And it can't be about business advice or something else. It has to be about legal advice. So this third part, made in confidence. Like I just said, if the AI tool is here, that means ChatGPT is here. That means the large language model is here. It is taking everything that I say, and it is going to be used in future AI conversations, quote unquote. So it is not confidential, and it is not privileged. So if your opponent doesn't get it from you, they could make a request. Say you're in discovery, your opponent can say, all communications between you and your lawyer where AI was present and transcribing notes. You would have to produce those notes because your AI has made that conversation not confidential. Now, this hasn't been fully tested. I don't know if maybe there's a judge out there who might find differently and say it's not in confidence. I don't see how they could do that, because you're basically inviting a corporation, OpenAI or whoever, to listen in on your conversation. So you got to be careful.
Can your adversary also seek, your communications with AI? Anything you've asked about the case, anything you've searched personally?
Yes. So that is a great question. And so maybe you're not with your lawyer, so it's not privileged at all. Maybe you're entering you're about to have a conversation with your lawyer, or you're preparing for it, and you just start asking an AI, like, can I fire this person? Can I fire this person after they've taken sick leave or something? If that's not privileged at all, so your opponent could get that communication and see that you are, maybe if you had done 10, 20 prompts and it was all different reasons to fire someone, that would really go to show that you were searching for a reason to fire someone, and maybe you had an improper motive. Why else would you be asking if you could fire someone for 10 different reasons? Because, unless that person did 10 different things, it could be a problem. And then here on this last bullet point, the subpoena tool, there have been only a few cases so far. that I could see online. They're kind of convoluted, but so I didn't paste them in here. But instead of going to you, your opponent could subpoena OpenAI, ChatGPT's owner, or Google or whoever, and say, I want all communications sent from Rob Triplet to you that are related to this case or something like that. And OpenAI would have to produce those documents. And it's not you being able to decide whether you're going to produce them or not. It would come from the software company directly to your opponent. So you've got to be very careful about what you say into AI.
All right, with those risks in mind, AI is still useful and it can be a great tool. Um, businesses can, save costs and time, and you can create templates to standardize things that you do in your business. If you already, have a specific document that you use, on a day-to-day basis, you can use AI to fill out that document for you. Tell it like fill in X, Y, and Z on this document for me, and draft a summary of the uses of for this document, things like that. It will speed things up for you. I mean, in employment law, AI can, draft template offer letters. It can review applications for hiring. If you get 1,000 applications for, one job, AI can review those applications for you, and speed up the hiring process and screen candidates. That comes with its own set of issues. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But AI could also draft contract language or handbook provisions. If you want to add a handbook provision that says something about, employees cannot be on their phones while working because it's a safety hazard, and because it takes away from their focus on machinery, right? And, you want it to say something like that. You type that into AI, and AI will output a very articulate handbook provision that after you review and approve it internally, we would suggest approve it with your attorney. Then you can input it into your handbook rather than like sitting down and thinking about the specific words you want to use, and drafting it yourself. That could save, an hour, 2 hours. And those things really add up, right? When we take something that could take, 1 to 2 hours and we do it in 30 minutes, that's can increase your productivity, throughout a whole week. If you do that every single day, you save 5 hours, and that compounds over time. So, if you're trying to use AI in employment law, they can produce like great templates, for things like an offer letter, right? But when we draft an offer letter, we need to be sure that it's accurate. We need to confirm the details about an employee's wage rate, if they're exempt or non-exempt, if they're going to get company benefits, are they an at-will employee, or is there a CBA? And what about termination? When can we terminate them? Does it require just cause, or can you terminate them for any which reason? So we want to beware that we don't let AI make these decisions for us. When we draft an offer letter, we want to go through it and make sure that the things that we want in the offer letter is actually there. AI could just remove the at will language because it read on the internet that at will, in your state, there's a presumption of at will employment. So AI doesn't think you need to include that in your offer letter. So if you don't include it in your offer letter, and then somewhere down the line, the employee says, oh no, you told me verbally that I can only be terminated for just cause. AI took that at will language out of your offer letter, and now you have a factual dispute. We previously talked about using AI for screening applicants for jobs. So hiring tools introduce their own risks. Jurisdictions such as New York City have new restrictions on using AI in screening candidates. So there's this program called Automated Employment Decision Tools. They're abbreviated AEDT, and it's essentially just a program that you can run employment applications through to speed up the hiring process. And then you can pick out candidates from thousands of applications, right? But New York is now requiring that anyone that use these programs do a bias audit and provide certain notices. And the bias audit is because these systems, they can have disparate impacts. They can unintentionally screen out applicants based on protected traits like race, age, sex, or union affiliation. Sometimes the large language models, they'll read information on resumes, such as like certain ethnic names or women's associations, and they'll automatically screen out those applicants because the data that AI used to learn how to run the program is biased information and it's fed from the internet. So we really have to be careful that we're not using these programs to discriminate against applicants.
Okay, so those are tools that we think, at least in our world, jump out as something AI can help. I mean, to be honest, I already have a template of an offer letter. It kind of looks like the one that I asked ChatGPT to write last night as a test. Same thing for a standard termination letter. I mean, you still have to fill in all of the accurate information, but I guess that it's not really the biggest breakthrough to get a template from a computer program, because you could probably find one on Google image search or something even 10 years ago. When you get into a employment contract, say it's for someone who's coming into your business as someone of an executive role, you need more than just a template. A template or a ChatGPT generated contract could be problematic. It could just be wrong legally, but let's put that aside for a second. It could just include a bunch of jargon that you're just not really sure whether it needs to be there or not. So I've highlighted a few things here. Choice of law. It's commonly in contracts, and that says the law of what state's going to govern this person's employment. So what does ChatGPT think? Well, companies are in Delaware, so sometimes ChatGPT will insert Delaware law because it's seen that. Remember, it's just reading other contracts that are out there. Well, maybe Delaware law conflicts with Pennsylvania law where you're working, and now you have a problem. And any sort of litigation, you're going to add an extra element of fighting of which law is going to apply, simply because ChatGPT put that in there. And another thing about termination restrictions, if you have an executive and you put cause, you actually should in those kinds of contracts, not in the CBA, be defining what you mean by cause, because you can make it pro-employer or pro-employee, and who knows what ChatGPT is going to do. So is it for cause means that you have to give them a 30-day notice of all the things they're doing wrong? Or is it for cause basically in your discretion to determine what's for cause? Those things really matter when you're in a dispute, and who knows what ChatGPT is gonna do. I also highlighted here sick time policies, just something I thought of. Pennsylvania doesn't have sick time rules, but Philadelphia does, exempt building trades, which is very relevant here. But New Jersey has a very robust sick time rule. So if you're doing a handbook and you tell ChatGPT to do it, and maybe ChatGPT says, do you do work in New Jersey? And all of a sudden it puts in the New Jersey sick time rule, but it doesn't say, it just applies to New Jersey employees. Now, all of a sudden you've given your Pennsylvania employees New Jersey sick time because it's in your handbook. So that's just something that I could see happen. I thought this would be very important to include as, lawyers for the chapter. AI is here. This is not a confidential privilege conversation. I'm not your lawyer. I'm the chapter's lawyer. You've heard this before. But when you're dealing with your counsel, you don't have to keep it secret if you have drafted something with AI. It's actually better to give your lawyer a heads up. Hey, I just ran this through ChatGPT. Can you make sure this is okay? And then maybe it's a very quick review, or no, I actually have a better template. And it's okay to ask your lawyer if they're using AI. It doesn't have to be secret or something that, I've seen clients send something which is obviously ChatGPT created. It looks very much like it came out of it. And then I'll ask and they kind of say, yeah, of course, yeah, I did. I mean, there's nothing shameful in that. It's just like getting a template. And the good thing is they're asking their lawyer if it's okay. Um, and then an interesting new point is, make sure that you're not being overcharged for AI. You know, it's okay to ask your lawyer if they are charging you for their special AI tool, which are very, very expensive. Because the AI tool is not going to do all the lawyer's work, but it could save a half hour or an hour. And that can be very valuable over time.
So what are Andrew and I using AI for? Data review, we'll get a ton of documents like a personnel file, investigative documents, and we'll put them into our Harvey program. And when I mentioned that Andrew and I are using AI, we're using our Harvey program and everything is confidential. So you don't have to worry about us using client data and the software using that information to better its program. So that's the benefits of having your lawyer use AI rather than you using it yourself, is because it's all confidential. So we'll put a bunch of documents into our AI program and it can create a timeline for us. It can review contracts. Sometimes we'll say, take these 6 CBAs and create a chart of all the sick time provisions. And then we can review the provisions quickly rather than, going through each article, scrolling down, copy pasting. It saves 30, 40 minutes. Non-legal research, like I said previously, sometimes we'll, take an adversary's website, copy and paste it, and ask AI to summarize what they do. And then, we'll edit language for second drafts as well. Take something and put it into AI and say, improve this document. And it'll spit out something that sometimes is a little more rigid than how we would typically write, but then we will, massage it and make the document, perfect. So it's just another way of using almost a spell check.
All right, with that, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Andrew and Gina. Everyone has the ability to unmute yourself. So if you do have a question, please feel free to do so, or you can use the chat feature.
Hi, this is Bernie Schaefer. Is it okay to talk? I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. I know I was waiting in line or anything, but are you guys at all concerned about this AI digging into your business? I mean, I'm just going to give you an example. I mean, um, there's been questions in the market, and this is relevant to you, Andrew, about the hiring requirements in our contracts and whether with the current administration they are still valid, with minority participation and stuff. And I AI'd that, Googled it, and I swear it was like I was talking to you, Andrew. You know what I mean? It was it looked like very official, and it came up with all this case law and stuff like that. So just wondering if that's an issue, or whether we should even trust it is what I'm driving at. So
It is an issue. I would never trust it completely, but it can give you a jump start if you're about to have a conversation with your lawyer.
uh,
You know, you might never see it, but we see it. We get an email, might get a little eye roll. But if it's good stuff and it's going to contribute to the conversation, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that, from your perspective, your lawyer says, "Oh no, that actually doesn't apply." So on
right,
the topic that you brought up, it would be interesting to me if ChatGPT is weighing like an executive order on the level of a law, which an executive order is not as strong as a law. Or is
right,
the AI saying that something is constitutionally wrong, which would be even, above a law? I think it's a good conversation starter. Like I did mention before, though, that question would not be privileged, so someone could get at it. Say the
right,
administration files a suit against contractors around here, and then, or maybe the other way around, a group files a lawsuit and says, "Aha, these contractors are trying to evade the affirmative action parts of their contracts and or contracts with the city or with the state. And look, they are trying to do that because they've been asking ChatGPT how to get around them, something like that.
Right.
That is an issue. That could be an issue because they could get at it. They could get those questions from ChatGPT or wherever. But I mean, on that topic, right now, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they could have subpoenaed Google for that same thing. Give me Bernie Schaefer's Google searches about affirmative action. If it was relevant to a case, Google would have to give them anyway. I mean, part of this is not really that new. But ChatGPT will give you an answer which you might act on, which could then be a little more problematic. So I would say that there's a problem that people could get your communications, but it is not something I would trust, but it's a good conversation starter for your lawyer. I looked at this and that, and tell me why I'm wrong is a good question. And that's a very, very good question to ask your lawyer, because they should be able to tell you what they think about that.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the group? All right, hearing none, we're right at the time here at 9:30. So I want to thank Andrew and Gina again for their presentation. The recording will be on the chapter's website, so please access that if you would like to refer back to it. I want to bring your attention to our January Industry 30, which will be on the 8th with Alltech, and they're going to touch on fleet management. So I hope you all will hop on then. And with that being said, we're going to log off, and I hope everybody has a great holiday. Thank you.